Nothing on the Bunnell Foundation's Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice can only come from your CF physician. Cystic fibrosis can be a devastating diagnosis, but living with the disease can bring positivity and a new appreciation for each day. From the Bunnell Foundation in Detroit, Michigan, it's the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast, sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceutical. Here's your host, Laura Bunnell.
If you have cystic fibrosis or you're a caregiver, you probably have heard of Andy Lipman. Andy is 47 years old and works hard to raise awareness about CF. As you'll hear Andy tell you in this podcast, he is an athlete with a rigorous daily workout routine to keep himself healthy. He also has a business degree. He's an author, husband, and father of two, which is quite an accomplishment. Lipman also started the CF Warrior Project after his fourth book. Grab a coffee or an iced tea and relax because you're about to hear a great story of a CF warrior. Thank you, Andy Lipman, for joining us on this podcast. It's great to meet you via Zoom face-to-face. Of course, I know your work, and I love everything that you're doing. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this. Thanks for all you do, by the way. I'm a big fan of yours as well.
Thanks. And it's been interesting to learn a little bit more about you that I didn't know. I did not know that you had a sister that died at 16 days old. Is that correct?
That's correct. Before I was even born.
So was this your parents' first child with CF? Is that when they realized?
Yes, that was their first child in all. You know, my sister, Wendy, was born in 1970. And unfortunately, just lived 16 days. Didn't even leave the hospital. Only one picture was ever taken of her.
Wow. And did they realize at that point she had CF, or did they discover that when you were born?
No, they realized that when she wasn't growing at all, and she was just very sickly, and they knew something was wrong. And, you know, back then, obviously, newborn screening wasn't available, but they knew to do a sweat test and a tester. And immediately they knew she had CF. And unfortunately, it was just too late. You know, obviously, if she only lived 16 days, there wasn't much they could do.
And isn't it interesting to you, such a hit or miss testing in the 70s or even today sometimes, even with newborn screening, but it's so hit or miss. Like some people really lucked out and they found out, like, you know, your parents did about your sister Wendy. And then some people in that same year had no idea and had 3 kids with CF and didn't find out until maybe their kids were 18. It's so not consistent.
It was pretty common back then, honestly, not to get diagnosed. The newborn screening is now so effective now, but back then there really wasn't anything. And I was born very big. I was born late. And back then they didn't push the mom to have it, you know, once the baby finally came out. And I was a couple of weeks late and I weighed 10 pounds, 10 ounces.
Oh my goodness.
So my mom and I, we even said, you know, if Wendy hadn't been born with CF, even though I had a block, you know, I had meconium ileus, they may not have known I had CF because I was such a big baby that they would have just been like, oh, he just had an intestinal blockage. It'll be fine, you know, blah, blah. But since she had it, they knew immediately when I had the meconium that likely I had CF.
And you're 47 years old now. Is that right?
I am, but I don't look a day over 46 and a half.
Yeah, I would even say 37. I mean, truly, you know.
Oh, now I'm a bigger fan of yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it.
No, you're looking great. And CF and age is so important. That's why, you know, everybody's always asking, oh, how old are you? And things like that. But now, do you have other siblings or?
I do. My sister was adopted. I have a younger sister who's 12 years younger than me, Emily, and she's doing great. And she lives in Atlanta as well, real nearby. So I have one sibling. And she's doing great. We have a great relationship, and you know she's very supportive of anything we do CF related, and it's just been great.
That's wonderful. So your parents diagnosed you, and then how was your life as far as treatment with CF?
I was pretty lucky. I mean, granted, I was on antibiotics several times, but I was able to avoid IV antibiotics when I was younger. But I did cough a lot. And my mom during the work week would do my therapy. She quit teaching when I was born because she knew what was going on. And she would do my postural drainage every morning. And my dad would do it on the weekends. And that was kind of how it worked. And I would take my digestive enzymes for every meal. And I remember that like one of the most exciting things for me is when they finally told me I could have fatty foods. I remember being in the doctor's office and they gave me pudding for the first time. And I was like so excited. It was just crazy. I mean, back then I couldn't really eat anything that had a lot of fat and I was very skinny. My arms were like toothpicks. And that's kind of how I grew up.
Isn't it interesting? That whole food thing is has evolved as well, I
Certainly
think.
does.
I don't know about you, but my girls have decided they eat very healthy, not necessarily high fat food anymore, and work out a lot. So,
That's good. I mean, when I was growing up, they just said, eat whatever you can.
right.
While at the time it seemed like it made sense, now it doesn't. Now it's, eat, but eat somewhat healthy. Try to avoid fried foods where you can, and just try to eat as healthy as possible. And I think I kind of do that now. Took a while.
You're very active, right?
I am. I work out every day. I run every day, whatever it takes, in the gym. Well, at the home gym now that we have a pandemic, but, I do work out as much as possible.
So, at what point did you decide that you were going to write some books? You're an author of 4 books, a 5th on the way. Is that correct?
That's correct. So I guess for me, it's kind of a strange story, but, I knew I had a sister growing up, but my parents never told me how she died. I assumed it was sudden infant death syndrome because 16 days is not a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow I just woke up on my 25th birthday, and I remembered an article that I read when I was a kid, and it was about CF, and it said the life expectancy for people with CF, you don't normally live to the age of 25. And I was terrorized by that as a kid. I mean, I was traumatized by it. It was awful. And then, so I woke up on my 25th birthday, and all of a sudden that flashback came. I remember reading that article, and all of a sudden I wanted to do everything. I wanted to write a book. I called my mom and I wanted to know how my sister passed away. And she finally told me. She said the whole family kept it as a secret because we didn't want to scare you because we knew you shared the same disease. And it was at that point I went to the cemetery for the first time. My mom, unbeknownst to me, went to the cemetery every single year to visit my sister on her birthday and brought her a stuffed animal. And so that was the first time. And that was the day I decided I was going to make a difference in the CF community.
Wow. What did you say to your sister that day? Did you talk to her?
I did. I apologized, actually, because at first I apologized for never visiting. But mostly I apologized because I was bitter a little bit as a kid, because around December, January every year, my sister was born December, died in January. My mom would always say, you're lucky to be alive. She would always get really sad and just always tell me, you're fortunate, you're fortunate. It took me a long time to figure out why she did that. And I was bitter towards my sister because I'm like, if you hadn't died, I wouldn't have to deal with this. And so I told her I'm sorry. And I also said I was sorry that I never told people I had a sister. And so I wanted to recognize her. I wanted to make a difference with her. And we started an event which slowly became a foundation. And we've raised about $4.5 million for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in her memory, called Wish for Wendy.
And it's still going strong today?
It is. We didn't do the softball tournament last year, and we're debating doing it this year because of the pandemic. But we still raise a lot of money for it, and it's a private family foundation that has done really well. We've raised a lot, and my books actually it goes to that as well. They're not for profit, and a lot of times we'll give it to CF charities. That's our thing, is we give it to other CF charities around the country, the CF Foundation. Even smaller foundations where we know that people with CF are running them and making a difference.
That is fantastic. And you must get so much back every time you put out a book or do something with your foundation. Your first book was the CF Warrior Project, 65 Stories of Triumph Against Cystic Fibrosis.
Right.
What happened after you did that book?
After I did that book, I just got a lot of notes from parents of kids with CF saying, thank you. This gives us hope. We were writing about all these people with cystic fibrosis. It was actually my wife's idea because I had put these Facebook posts of people with CF, and they were getting tons of shares all over social media. And she said, you should write a book. And I'd already written books about myself, and I was kind of sick of writing about myself. I thought it'd be fun to write about other people. And that's that got me into that. And so I wrote about 65 warriors around the world, not just the country, but the world, that were defying the odds with CF, and people just really took to it. So I thought it was really cool. So I decided to do another one, which is what we're working on now.
And it really is a cool book. It really highlighted so many different people.
Yeah, and different stories, which is kind of neat. Some people were diagnosed when they were in their 40s. A couple of them were diagnosed, really late in life. And then there are others diagnosed at birth. And there are others that are athletes, others who are writers. I mean, everybody's got their own thing. But the most important thing is they work hard. They don't give up. And I tell people all the time, just because someone passed away from CF didn't mean they didn't work hard. We're all CF warriors before or, after, but it's what we do in that time that we have a life that defines us, whether we live 20 days or 20 years. It's just all about fighting.
Absolutely. And what book are you working on now?
So it's going to be the second edition of the CF Warrior Project. I think we're going to call it kind of something similar, that we're working on a title, but we've already got 65 warriors. So I'm editing as we speak, and then I'm going to, hire an editor to kind of help me with that. And then we'll start looking for publishers and go from there and just see how it goes. And we're really excited. I think it's going to be a really great book. And this time we're doing it a little differently. It's not everyone has CF. We have a lot of people in the book now that are champions for the disease, whether they're celebrities, where they run a foundation, where they or they're a parent of a child with CF, or they're a sibling of a child with CF, or an adult with CF. So it's really just all over the map, and we're really excited about it. And I think it's going to be, you're going to see some people in there that you're going to be, I didn't know they had a CF connection when they do.
Wow. And what do you think about people sharing their stories? I guess I think to my girls, and maybe they don't always want to share their story, or they don't always want to talk about CF. Do you find that yourself as well?
Yeah, for most of my, until my 20s, I never shared my story. In fact, I didn't tell people unless they were really, really, really close to me that I had CF, because I always felt like it made me look different, that I was alienated because of it. I remember I would do my vest when I was in my fraternity house in college. And when someone knocked on the door, I ripped it off, didn't want anyone to see it, put everything away. They'd ask, what was that loud noise? I'm like, what noise? I didn't hear anything. And I guess I had the TV up really loud. I just didn't like to tell people about it because I thought it made me look different. And I didn't want people to pity me, because of this disease. And it took me a long time to figure out that wasn't the point. The point was I could advocate, that I could raise awareness by telling people that someone has a disease, and he's not just living with it. He's fighting for his life every single day.
What new things have you learned since writing, or you're still in the process of writing this book?
I would say that everybody's got a different way of looking at cystic fibrosis. Some people, and everybody's had a different journey, to be honest with you. Some people have been in hospitals all their lives. Some people have been fortunate, maybe haven't been at all, or have just been on IVs at home, or have been on oral antibiotics, but everybody's got a different journey. That doesn't make them less of a warrior. It just makes their journey different. I think that's what I've learned, even from the first book to the second book, is I think sometimes when we don't go through as much, like me personally, I've done all the IVs and stuff, and I've had a lot, some very bad sicknesses, but not like some people. But that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't make you better or worse or anything else. It just means you've been fortunate in many ways, but at the same time, we're all fighting the disease. And I think some people are afraid to speak up because they're like, well, mine hasn't been as bad. I'm like, that's okay. It's okay. You're still fighting cystic fibrosis. I mean, you're still doing all these treatments every day. You're still taking medications. You're still, doing everything you can to beat the disease. So don't feel worse about it. I think being open is so important. Now, granted, I don't think you need to do it as a kid. I think that's a really tough time to do it. But as you get older, I think it's a great opportunity to raise awareness and help other people.
I agree. So everybody seems to want to write a book. I mean, so many CF moms that I've talked to, and even myself, I've put it off for 25 years. I've thought about it like, I just don't have enough time or whatever. And like I said, other CF moms are thinking the same thing. What is it for you? Is it just jump off the cliff and do it kind of thing, or just start? How did you propel yourself, or did you just not have any thought, like you just did it?
Well, I always like to write. I never had written a book per se, but when I would do research papers or anything else in school, once I started something, I really loved it. Like I got into it. Then I thought cystic fibrosis was such a passion of mine, like learning about it. I thought to myself with the first book I did, which if you can see in the background, I was alive at 25. That wasn't on purpose, by the way. But that was the first book I wrote, waking up on my 25th birthday. But I thought about it. I was like, when I was growing up, I didn't have anyone I knew with cystic fibrosis, because at that time they finally started telling people you really shouldn't be near anyone with CF, the 6-foot rule,
Right.
unless you're related, obviously. But if you're not, I mean, it's very difficult. And so I didn't really have anybody to talk to, and there was no internet back then. So I didn't have social media that I could find out. And so I wanted to kind of tell my story so that if there's somebody younger who didn't have anyone, they could read that book. And the other thing was, when I was reading books when I was younger about CF, I hate to say it, the author either passed away or it was the parent who wrote the book. And so you really didn't get a firsthand feel of what it's like to be, quote unquote, beating cystic fibrosis, and I wanted to tell that side of the story. And I know to some, they're like, well, that's not realistic. I'm like, well, I'm here,
Right.
and I'm fighting and I feel like I'm beating it. It's a mental thing for me. And that's not to say that someone, like I said, who died after a few years isn't beating cystic fibrosis. We all are. By fighting it every single day, that's beating it, in my opinion. So that's what it was all about for me.
And I have to say that as a parent, when the girls were little, I have about 10 books about people with CF who died, and I still haven't read them. I bought them. I saw them. I'm sure there's, therapy. We could work it out for me, but I bought them, but I cannot read them.
No,
and I still can't read them, but I thought like, oh, I need this information. I need to know, but I couldn't open the book.
Yeah, that for me is like Alex, The Life of a Child, which is a great book. Great, it was a TV movie in the 80s. It was also a really well-written book. I was friends with Frank DeFord. So, I didn't read it until I was much older. And it was still hard for me to see someone, suffer so much. I think she died at the age of 8. For those of you who don't know, Alex DeFord, her father, Frank DeFord, one of the biggest sports writers in the business, and also worked for NPR, Sports Illustrated, HBO, Real Sports. And his daughter had CF, and we lived 8 years, and they told her story, and she was just an amazing individual, but she passed away. And for me, I saw that TV movie when I was a kid, and that was traumatizing for me because I saw her throwing up. I saw her sick. I saw her in the hospital, and it was a lot.
That is a lot. And then you wrote your book when you turned 35.
I did. Actually, right before that, I had written a second book. It was a fictional story, though. It's called A Superhero Needs No Cape, and it was about a boy who wanted to play Major League Baseball, even though he had CF. So I told that story. Maybe it's not so fiction. It's what I always want to do. But now my son is living through me, and he's playing Little League. I told him, don't worry, you don't have to make it to the majors. But
that's a relief, right?
Exactly, for both of us. But so the drive at 35 was just, telling the story of how I got married. My wife and I got married, and we had children through IVF. We told that story, and that was obviously a difficult story to tell, but it is worth it.
And that is a story because women with CF can have a baby. Mm-hmm. It takes a big health toll on them, but men with CF usually
96 to 98% are infertile, and that's basically because they don't have a vas deferens. And that's what basically takes the semen to the penis, to the egg, all that, which I should have learned that in health class. But it was very difficult to learn that. I learned that before I was even married. Before I started dating, in my 20s, I actually did the research. I went and got tested and was told my sperm was suboptimal. And I was really sad about that. And, but when my wife and I were dating, when we were, about to get engaged, she told me she was in it for the long run and we could try and we could always adopt, whatever it took. But going through IVF was one of the toughest things for both of us, not just the physical part, which she obviously dealt with a lot more on the physical side, but the emotional and the financial part is so difficult to deal with.
And hopefully now there are foundations that help pay for that. I mean, we do financial assistance, medical assistance, but hopefully, because there's no other way. I mean, of course, there's adoption and things like that. But if you're trying to do it, in vitro, that's something people.
It's really difficult. And I had, what was the hardest part is like in social media, when people find out that you went through IVF, they're like, how could you do that? How could you bring this disease to other people? And I said, listen, first of all, I don't judge anybody else, whatever they do. But I said, my wife was tested. She didn't have the CF gene. And if you know anything about cystic fibrosis, that meant pretty much my kids are likely to be carriers and that's it. Mm-hmm. And they'll have to get tested. Their significant others will have to get tested if they want to have children. And I said, hopefully by then there's a cure anyway. But we really wanted to have kids. We wanted to make sure that my wife was not a carrier and she wasn't. And so we went through it and that was our choice. And I know that not everyone's going to agree with it, but it was one of those things we really wanted to have kids. And, never take a day for granted. I'm thrilled that we have two. So we're very fortunate, boy and a girl.
Absolutely. And we, after Molly was diagnosed, our firstborn, it was a long, hard decision to have a second one. And the in vitro thing was very expensive. So we did not do in vitro. And we were naive and we thought, oh, what are the chances we get to have a second child with CF? And, 1 in 4 every pregnancy. But we stopped after Emily was born. But same thing, no regrets. The kids know about it. We've not, we've been very truthful.
My parents were the same way. My parents were, I was the second, and the second one was CF, and that's why they adopted the third, because they hoped after Wendy, they're like, well, there was a 25% chance. What are the odds that well, it was 25%, but
right.
They didn't think I'd have it, and they were hopeful, and then it just didn't work out. But it did work out. You know what? I'm here. I'm alive. And I'm trying to make a difference in the world. And I think, cystic fibrosis is just a part of me, but I don't mind if people say it defines me. That's fine. Because if it makes a difference for others, then I'm willing to take that.
I do talk about this a lot with people, but I do see it as a gift. I wouldn't say, yay, you should have a child with CF, because, it's, oh my gosh, it's, well, I can't even think of the words right now, but it's wonderful and horrible. And But it is who we are, right? It's put us on our path to helping.
Sure. There are 30,000 people in the U.S. with CF, and 10 million people are CF carriers. I mean, it's a big part of the world. It's a big part of this country. It's a big part of the world, 70, 80,000 around the world with CF. So it's out there, and we all have to make our own decisions, and we live with those decisions, and we do the best we can with those decisions. It's kind of like parenthood. Parenthood, as they say, you can do a lot of things in parenthood, not necessarily right or wrong. It's just, you do what you can. You do what you can to raise the child to the best of your ability. So, just that's kind of what CF, you do the best you can with the best of your ability.
And what do your kids think? I think that would be an interesting book from the children's perspective who have parents with CF.
That's a great point. There aren't as many older, that can talk about it, because a lot of them are still young through the IVF process. It's kind of a newer thing over the last 20, 30 years. So there aren't a lot of older CF patients that talk about it, but I've talked to a few, and my children, as far as they go, I mean, they're kind of used to it. They'll bring somebody in the house, not during a pandemic, unfortunately, but they used to bring their friends in the house, and they would come by, they would see me doing my therapy, and they would be like, what's he doing? And my sister, my daughter, or my son would just be like, he's doing his therapy. That's what he does. He has CF, makes him breathe better. To them, I did a video on my YouTube where I talked to my daughter when she was I think she was 5 or 6, and my son was like 2. And I said, what does daddy deal with? She would go, cystic fibrosis. Yeah, like they're so used to it. Not like, oh, cystic,
Right.
They make it a positive. I mean, they know what it is. They know their concerns, but they also know that I fight it every single day. And they know it's just part of our lives. And even during a pandemic, my kids and my wife, people don't talk about that side of it, is they have to be careful too. It's not just the patient, that has to sit here all the time, or, has to be real careful. It's the kids, it's the wife, it's the significant other, whoever that is. But my kids, they deal with it really well. I mean, they really do. And we don't make it our conversation every day. But if I'm not feeling well, I explain it. Or if I do, for example, I do pulmonary function tests at home. My son will see me like tired or deep breathing, like, Dad, what's up? Are you okay? And I'll tell him what I did. He goes, oh, okay. Okay. He doesn't even, that's it. Doesn't faze them.
Right.
They just ask. They know, like, if I'm not feeling that great, they'll ask and they'll say things, but I don't want to make it their lives, and it's not their lives. It's my life. And they're just, they're there to lend support when they need to, but I try not to make it too much of an issue for them.
And so how is your wife doing? I know that it's love, and that's why she married you, and that's why you're together. But as I have girls in the early 20s, I do think of, will someone be able to handle everything and CF?
Yeah. And here's an interesting way to look at that. My dad, I think, was the one who told me this, is that, yeah, it's going to be tougher to find someone, but you're going to find someone really special. You're going to know that someone can deal with a lot of tough things if they can deal with your CF. And that's what I found with my wife, and she's just really, she's not only helps me when things are tough, but she's a motivator. Like, my wife has multiple sclerosis and has beaten cancer.
Wow.
I mean, she's amazing. And so she's the first one to be like, come on, Andy, you gotta do this. You gotta pull through. You gotta fight. Like, she didn't put up with pity, which is the best thing about her. She doesn't put up with my pity. if I ever get like, I don't pity myself very often, but I've gone through times where I've gotten depressed. I deal with depression and anxiety. So, and I do see a therapist for that. And I would be glad to talk about that if you'd like to. But, that's important. Like, she's always my biggest cheerleader, but she's not going to take it either. If she sees me down for too long, she's going to like, you got to get up. You got to fight. You got to get back up on the mat.
And that is with everything your wife's working through and with, and you, I mean, it is a lot. So many stories, right? So we all have so many things to talk about. I hate using the word deal with, because I think you're working through it and you're just doing what you have to do. But yeah, let's talk about the mental side of it. I think as a parent of kids who have CF, I've gone to therapy. I highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful. And one of my daughters goes to therapy more regularly than the other. But how has it helped you, and why you continue?
Well, my analogy is I'm a big baseball fan. And if you think about when a pitcher's having trouble on the mound, a pitching coach comes out to help him out. And I look at that as, you could be the best pitcher in the world. There's still going to be a pitching coach that comes out to talk to you. And what I mean by that is, I could be in the greatest shape of my life mentally, but I'm still going to go through something that I need someone to talk to. And so I go to a therapist every 6 months. And I also have a psychiatrist that I go to every 6 months. And it's great. And it helps me because I can talk to someone without fear of saying anything that's I deem unhealthy. He can say to me, yeah, that makes sense. Or nah, why not do this? Why not do that? And it's a lot easier when that person is not related to you, when that person doesn't know you, and they can hear you out and listen to everything you have. And you find yourself unconditionally just saying anything you can, anything you want, anything you can. It's just it really helps me to see the bigger picture. And one of the best pieces of advice I got from a therapist is, I was always telling her I would get really down because when I would accomplish something, I didn't feel like it was enough. And she told me, when you get to the top of the mountain, stop. Don't go back down to the next, and don't choose the next mountain. Enjoy the view and accomplishment. And then when you're ready, move on to the next one. And that really helped me, because for a while I was like, I did this. Oh, that's not enough. I got to do this. I got to do this. And that's part of my anxiety. I deal with pretty severe anxiety at times that I just can't stop. I'm like, oh, no. This can't be good. This can't be good. I didn't do that. And now I've learned to just stop, look at it from a different perspective, and get through it that way.
And I've had recently, actually, a couple young mothers who have very young kids, I would say 6 and under, with CF, and they are wanting a therapist that has CF knowledge. But I don't think that's necessary, and that's what I told them. I think anyone you go to would get educated, or you could talk to them about that and go from there. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. In fact, I don't think they even need any CF knowledge. I think they need just to be there for someone. The CF part of it, we deal with it all day long. Sometimes it's a nice to get a break, and we don't always want to talk about just CF. When I was in my 20s, I talked about relationships and anything like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be one topic. And I think it's just important that we have someone who can talk to us on a wide range of issues, and not just the CF part, because we're well aware of that. And if we want to talk about it, we will. But CF doesn't have to be, we don't need someone who needs to understand the medical side of it. We need someone who can understand what you deal with anxiety, with depression, anything like that. And so, my 2 therapists, neither of them had any experience with CF. I've been working with them for years, and they've learned over time. They've done their research and they ask questions, and that's fine with me. Like I said, I deal with a social worker when I go to my clinic. I deal with my doctors. I deal with enough of it. I don't need it every minute of the day.
When you think to your future, what are your thoughts? Is it concern for your life expectancy, or does that not even enter your mind? Are you just thinking about kind of what the next book or project is?
I guess I learned a long time ago, take it day by day. One day at a time. That's a mental thing. That's something with my anxiety and depression. I learned one day at a time is so important. But, I also heard this theory. It's called the grandfather theory. Some people call it the rocking chair theory, is that you're in your 80s somewhere one day and you look back and you're like, I didn't do enough. I was too worried about the future to enjoy the present. And so what I say to myself now at 47 is I still got a long way to go. God willing, bus doesn't hit me tomorrow. But yeah, I'm just looking at day by day. If I write another book, great. If I don't, it's okay. I look forward, hopefully, to one day being a grandfather. Not now, God, no, not yet. But I do look forward to that, and then having celebrating a 50th anniversary with my wife. I look forward to spending all those years with my friends and family and doing whatever, and just being happy and fighting and being. I'm okay being known as the CF fighter, as being someone who fights cystic fibrosis his whole life. I hope there's a cure. I really do. So I've been very fortunate that I'm on a CFTR modulator, and that has changed my life dramatically. My lung function has gone from high 70s to low 80s to now being in the low to mid 90s. And so to me, while it's not a cure, it's still a difference maker. And I'm hoping there will be a cure in the future.
Something else we talked about too. What a wonderful thing, right? The CF modulators. I mean, if you're born with CF today, so much more hope. And although it's not a cure and things can still go wrong and you still have the same fear as a parent, what a wonderful kind of outlook and where you can go with the disease today.
Well, I tell young families now, I'm like, this is going to sound strange, but it's a great time to be born with cystic fibrosis. And it really is. I mean, there's so many great things coming out. And even if something doesn't fit you, like if there's a modulator that doesn't fit you, they're working on others. And so it's really exciting. And we live in a world that's totally different from the one I was born in the early 70s. When I was born, the life expectancy was 16 years for someone with cystic fibrosis. And here it is this year in September, I'll turn 48. So I'll have tripled that number. And that's something I'm really proud of, that I've put in the fight, that I'm here. And has it been because I've been fortunate? Absolutely. But it's also through hard work, working out every day. I run at least 2.25 miles every single day. I work out with weights in my home gym every day. I do my treatments twice a day and do nasal therapies, do anything, take my enzymes with all my meals. I haven't missed a treatment in over 30 years. So, over 20 years. In college, I had missed several.
Makes sense.
But after college, I just made a decision that I was going to do it every day. So whatever I've had to do, whatever my doctor has advised that I thought would help me, I did it. And we as cystic fibrosis patients, one of the cool things is we know our bodies better than anyone else. And it's good to have a doctor, though, that you trust and that you listen to and that you take their advice and say, hey, yeah, that makes sense. And if you don't, you tell them, hey, nah, I don't think that's something I think would work for me. But I've learned to be my own advocate, and I've learned to fight hard, and I've learned to appreciate every single day. I'm very, very, very fortunate to be where I am. And I will say one of the most important things about having CF and surviving that isn't talked about enough is having a strong support system. And right now, my wife is amazing. She's been a great support system. Having 2 children, my sister, Emily, and my parents, my father, Charles, he's always like, go, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And then my mom, who sadly passed away this past November from cancer.
So sorry.
My mom was my, I appreciate it. She was everything. I mean, she was just one of those people that she would love on me, but she would also be like, come on, Andy, pep up. You gotta get up. You gotta do it. You gotta fight. I remember one time she and I this was a couple of years before she passed, but we were in the doctor's office. I had gotten really sick and he was about to admit me. And my mom thought it would be better to do IVs at home. And he's like, I really think it would be good if we admit him. I really do. And my mom looked at me and looked at him. The same thing she did when I was a kid. And my doctor said I was not doing well. She took me to a different doctor, like to one in a different place. But she looked at him. She said, I think he can get better. I think he can get better. Andy, what do you think? You think he can get better? She goes, can you try giving him an inhaler and see how his PFTs do? So I took an inhaler and my PFTs went up like 10%. They were still really low for me. But he's like, I think we can do IVs at home. My mom looked at me. She goes, I know you. You'll fight better at home. You'll get stronger. You'll be around your children and your wife. And that's what you need. And 6 weeks later, I got the IVs off. My lung function was strong, and I haven't looked back since. And I remember my mom was always right behind me, and she always told me that I could do it. And so even though she's passed away, every day I'm grateful that she was my mom and that I will continue to fight in her memory.
And what a wonderful tribute. And that's what our Portraits of CF calendars are going to be this year. And you're going to be in it and talking about the support, the team. That's exactly what the calendar is about. So we're honored to have you in our calendar to be able to share your support story in that as well.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I look forward to that. And I'm just grateful. I hope that it gets told more often about the support system, because when the patient has CF, the whole family has CF. It really does. Yes, it's different, but I've learned from CF parents, it's such a different perspective, and it's not easier. Yes, maybe physically it's easier, but mentally it's so difficult from what I've gathered. Just every day they're like, God, I wish I could put it on me and not them, and I hear that all the time. I get it. I get what you're saying. Having 2 kids of my own now, I get it. I hate when anytime they're dealing with anything, I want to put it on myself.
Right. Absolutely. And I could really talk to you for hours and hours, because there's so much more that I want to talk about, but all your books are on this podcast page, and all your social media contacts are on this page so that people can connect with you and find out more about you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or talk about that maybe we haven't touched on in regard to yourself or your books?
No, I would just say, we're really excited about, I know you'll have the website on there, the CF Warrior Project, but we love what it is. Actually, it started as just Facebook posts, and then it turned into a book, and then it's turned into a movement. And what we're trying to do is show that people with CF, we're not here to be pitied. We're strong. We can do a lot of things, and we're going to accomplish a lot of things. And that's my whole thing is that's why I do what I do. That's why I put in the work, and that's why I write these books, because I want to show people that we're not here just to breathe. We're here to live. And a lot of us are doing that every single day, and just giving it, whether we're in a hospital, whether we're sitting at home during a pandemic, whatever it is, we're still fighting, and nothing was going to stop us.
And so powerful, very powerful thoughts and words. If somebody wants to get involved with the CF Warrior Project, how can they get involved?
They can go on the website. There's a way to contact us, but there's also, it's cfwarriorproject@gmail.com. They can reach us that way. But there's several ways, and feel free to submit your story. While we already have enough for this year's book, we're going to write other books in the future, and we'll be glad to contact you. And we also do blogs and guest blogs, and whatever it takes. We're going to write about people who are defying the odds and making a difference in the community. So please, follow us. And we also have a TikTok now, which never thought as a 47-year-old I would have a TikTok, and don't think my kids haven't made fun of me yet. But we're trying to tell the next generation and the generation even after that CF is beatable. There's going to be a cure, and I'm living proof.
Well, I'm going to check out that TikTok, and I think everybody should. I want to see your TikTok. Yeah, that's very exciting. Very hip and cool of you. Yeah.
My family would not say I'm hip or cool, but yes, it does seem so from my perspective. But thank you. Give me some hope.
Well, thanks so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for telling your story to all of us.
Thanks, Laura. And thank you for what you do. And please tell your daughters, I'm very proud of them. I've done a little research myself, so I'm very proud of all they've accomplished, and all you guys have accomplished as parents. I mean, it really doesn't get talked about enough, but you're doing a great job raising 2 strong young women who are both CF warriors.
Thank you.
The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen.
It's not complicated.
Who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrating, but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, check them out online at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Vertex Pharmaceutical, the science of possibility, and produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts,